This phone has wireless charging, it has an IP68 water resistance rating, an AMOLED 2X display, 120Hz display as well, and the price has come down by $70 in 2024. It was $626 before, now it's just $550. This is the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE, and considering that the Samsung flagship devices, the S24 series, have been launched, I feel it's a great time to discuss this mid-range device from Samsung from late last year. Here are 23 things to know about the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE. Without further ado, let's get to the video. Inside the box, you've got the phone itself in this black wrap, which we'll get to later. You also get a box with the quick start guide, the SIM ejector tool, and the USB-C to C cable. Now, the box you get here is similar to what you will get with the new flagship phones. That's the high-end S24s and S23s. It's this slim box with very few accessories. Can we talk about how phones are taking stuff away from boxes these days? Like, why? They used to give us a whole big charger, but now this is what we get. Taking the wrap off, I like the simple design of the S23 FE. While it does not do anything out of the ordinary with this design, it's just enough to make you feel like, it's doing a lot. And that seems to be the theme with this phone in general, as we'll get into more details. This device is covered by Gorilla Glass 5 on the front and the back. The frame is aluminum and it's very sleek in the hand. It has this very nice feeling to it. Something about the aluminum and glass combination adds that sense of luxury to this phone, and it just feels good when you're using it. I also like that the edge is rounded. It's not straight. It has this curve to it on the edges all around, and I think that's just a very nice touch. While Gorilla Glass 5 is supposed to be a sign that your device can take a hit or two, please remember that it's still glass and glass breaks, so the best bet would be to put a case on your phone, but not me though. Just to ensure maximum safety, please put a case on your phone. One of the things I appreciated the most about this device was the size and the weight. It's not too big and it's not too small either, and most importantly, it's not too heavy. I think it falls in a very nice sweet spot, and I just like how it feels in the hand, how it's easy to hold. On paper, this guy is 6.22 inches long and 3.01 inches wide, and it also weighs around 209 grams according to Samsung. This makes it slightly bigger and weightier than the base S23, S23 Plus, S24 and S24 Plus. The Ultra versions are much heavier than this guy. So if the weight of your phone is essential to you and you do not want something that is as heavy as the S23 and S24 Ultras, and you don't want something that is too light either, well, the S23 FE kind of meets that mark for you. If you take this device for a drive or you go into the desert, you should be fine. The keyword is should be fine, considering its IP68 rating making it dust and water resistant. But please be careful, because as advertised, it is only water resistant up to 1.5 meters underwater for 30 minutes. Samsung has always had some of the best displays on smartphones. They even have some displays for iPhones as well. I like that they did not choose to step down on the display of the S23 FE here. You're getting a dynamic AMOLED 2X display, and it's a flagship display. It's the same as the ones they placed in the S23 Ultra, the S24s as well. And it's easy to spot the display quality once you power up this device. It's also worth noting that this display can do 120 Hz in terms of refresh rate, and this is already evident as you use the device, as you see the interface. But most importantly, I think you would appreciate it when you're playing games on it. It's also worth noting that you can choose a dynamic refresh rate to save you some battery. I have to also point out that this is not the same as LTPO. The display of the S23 FE can adjust its refresh rate to lower for when you do not need it, but it does not have the LTPO technology that gets as low as 1 Hz when you're looking at a still screen. Also, for the resolution of this screen, it's 1080p by 2340, which is pretty decent at this level. But again, thanks to the earlier discussed AMOLED screen, you probably won't be able to tell the difference between this and the higher end flagship ones. That being said, you also get support for HDR10 Plus alongside 1450 nits of peak brightness, which is just very nice to have. All these great features are now spread across this 6.4-inch screen of the S23 FE, and I don't think anyone with a phone this size expects a larger screen, but it still offers an excellent viewing experience in this small-ish form factor. It's not too small and it's also not too big. The one thing I noticed on the screen at first was the size of the bezels. I think it's the only physical feature of this device that is not reminiscent of a flagship device, but still, once you use it and once you use it more often, your eyes will quickly get adjusted to it, and I don't think it's that big of a deal considering everything else. Now, on the performance front, I have a bit of a mixed feeling about the direction that Samsung has gone with regards to the S23 FE. Now, this device runs a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset. This is certainly not a bad chipset. It was in fact a flagship chipset from 2022. Now, as much as I appreciate the effort that was put in the flagship chipset on the S23 FE, you also have to consider that this device is being carried forward into 2024. And people will not use their phone for just 1 year and change it. They are not like tech reviewers or something. They will use their phone for many years. But how long would they use a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset for? Especially at this price point. Regardless, you will not be able to tell that this is an older chipset because everything just works seamlessly. It still feels like a competent flagship device for the most part. I played Call of Duty for about 30 minutes at the highest possible setting, and despite the phone getting warmer as I played, the performance did not drop. Thanks to that 120Hz display, you can play Call of Duty at the maximum frame rate, but it's not powerful enough to carry the maximum frame rate plus the very high graphic quality in the Call of Duty setting. This device runs Android 14 with Samsung's One UI version 6.1. The interface here is everything that you probably are already used to with more recent Samsung devices. Both the icons here and the overall feeling of this device is just Samsung as usual. Oh, and you also get Samsung alternatives to Google apps. You have your Samsung versions as well. The S23 FE does a decent job in terms of storage options and the RAM options. There are only two options for storage, 128GB and 256GB. I think a 512GB version would have been nice for this device, but that would have taken this phone out of the target price range. You only get 8GB of RAM here, which is enough for most people. Something I'm saying that is a major thing with the S23 FE is just enough. It's not necessarily a flagship level device, but it's also not a budget level device. And I think Samsung did a great job with distincting it from those two separate portions of the fence. Let's talk about the cameras. Most people love the photos from Samsung devices, the photos that Samsung devices produce, because first of all, it's vibrant. And let's not forget to talk about the processing. When you take a picture with your Samsung phone, the processing is next level. There are 3 cameras on the back of the S23 FE, and interestingly, they are almost the same cameras that you will get on the S23 Plus and even the S24 Plus. The main camera here is a 50 megapixel camera. You have a 12 megapixel ultra wide and an 8 megapixel telephoto lens with 3 times zoom. The only difference between the S23 FE and the S24 Plus is that the telephoto camera is an 8 megapixel one. I think the hardware is pretty cool for the price you're going to be paying for the S23 FE. Coupling that with the image processing that Samsung offers, I think you'll be just fine with the pictures that come with the S23 FE. I think you actually really like it. The pictures taken by the device really impressed me, especially when you are under good lighting conditions. Once again, that Samsung image processing really comes to life when you take pictures with this device. So I tried taking photos under different lighting conditions to see how this processing would perform, and here's how it did. I think some of the photos were picture perfect, but when the lighting is not favorable, the device starts to struggle with the exposure, and you can see that here. When I took a picture in low light with the S23 FE, of course it will have some noise, but with processing, Samsung will take out this noise and try to smoothing it and make it as presentable as possible. Another camera feature that caught my attention though is that this device shoots 8K video. Now, why do you need 8K video recording? I don't think many people are using 8K because you can't really see the difference between 4K and 8K, especially on a phone screen like this, unless you're like exporting it. Regardless, I think it's an interesting feature that can at least serve as bragging rights for you. You know, my phone shoots 8K, can your phone shoot 8K? But in terms of overall video quality, I think you will do just fine with 4K or HD videos. You can shoot 8K at 24 frames per second, while 4K videos can be shot in 30 or 60 frames per second. You can also shoot 240 frames per second at 1080p. The video quality was pretty decent, and it seems Samsung has adapted the color processing from pictures onto video, and they look really sharp and saturated. So Kelechi is currently recording me in 8K at 24 frames per second. Click the link below to download this video file and see the actual quality for yourself. but this is what 8K looks like. Let me know what you think in the comments below. When you turn things over to the front for the selfie camera, the S23 FE offers one single 10 megapixel selfie camera. I think this is a decent number considering that the highest end S23 Ultra has just 12 megapixels. But I think you also have to keep in mind that a lot of the heavy lifting is done by image processing these days. So it does not matter how much megapixels per se. If you take a picture on a Samsung phone, you will get Samsung processing and Samsung sharpness, and that's what you get with the S23 FE. These are the selfies I took with the S23 FE, and I have to say that I was impressed. Just like the photos that you will get on the rear camera, the back camera, this 10 megapixel front-facing camera is very good for selfies, especially in good lighting. Of course, however, you will get less quality in your photos under low light or poorly lit conditions. Videos were generally impressive on the S23 FE. Once again, one of the keys to getting a good picture or video out of this guy is good lighting if you are outdoors or indoors. When it's darker, you would experience a lot of noise. But other than that, if you are outdoors taking videos, you should easily get a good selfie video or any kind of media from this guy. Before we move on from the cameras, the portrait mode on the S23 FE deserves a category of its own. First off, for the front and back cameras portrait modes, you get a bunch of options to modify your portraits. There's a studio mode that allows you to brighten the image, but the results are not going to be the best if you don't have good lighting. There are two black and white modes and a backdrop mode that looks like this. Then there's a color pop mode that turns everything in your background black and white. Portraits taken with the back camera look great based on the image quality, but you do have to watch out for the blur strength if you want to have the best results. By default, the blur strength will be set to the highest, but it can be a bit rough around the edges and edge detection will not look very nice. The same thing applies to portraits on the front camera. So if you want to get a natural looking blur on your portrait shot, try and keep the blur strength to a very low number. On the back camera, you can take portraits at 1x, 2x or 3x and they all look good. In general, the cameras of the S23 FE are quite decent, but again, don't expect them to create anything extraordinary in low light situations. Another thing I really like is the addition of that swipe gesture that's on Samsung, where you just swipe your finger right at the center of your viewfinder and it changes to the rear camera or vice versa to the front camera. I think it's just a nice quality of life feature, and we've seen it on quite a number of phones and some Samsung phones as well. So on the S23 FE, you get a stereo speaker setup. You see the more obvious one, the speaker grill at the bottom, and on the top is where you have your second speaker. I have to say that I was impressed by the audio quality that came right out of the speakers here. And for a device this size, I think it's almost rare to get the level of depth and richness that the S23 FE's sound offers. Audio is clear and crisp, and it doesn't sound too thin. And here's what it sounds like.
West Africa economic relations.
I think the tech sector is at the heart of that partnership already.
When companies place their fingerprint scanners under the display, it's usually a massive gamble. But over time, the tech really has improved and it has become more functional. And it doesn't fall short on the S23 FE. It's quite responsive, taking a second or two to read your fingerprint and unlock the device after detecting your finger. You might experience some issues when you're setting up your fingerprints on the S23 FE, but it usually works fine afterwards. It's also worth noting that the tech powering this under-display scanner is optical. For higher-end devices like the S23 Ultra, the under-display fingerprint scanner there is like ultrasonic tech, and that functions using sound waves, while the S23 FE on the other hand uses just optical tech. Basically, this just uses light. Ultrasonic fingerprint sensors are going to be more expensive, so it made sense that they did not add that into this guy here. You are not restricted to the fingerprint sensor though. The Samsung Galaxy S23 FE also offers face unlock, and I think it's probably one of the best face unlocks I've used personally. The only time that this face unlock will struggle is in the dark. It can be a hit or miss sometimes, but in most cases it will work fine. The battery on the S23 FE is 4,500 mAh. This is a decent capacity for a device at this level, especially considering that it's a relatively small device. After spending a couple of days with this device, I concluded that this device is not designed for heavy users. If you want to start and end your day on a full charge, you are unlikely to get that with the S23 FE. The S23 FE will probably get you around 5 hours of screen time after starting your day with a full charge. Speaking of charge, there are two charging options with the S23 FE. You can get as high as 25 watts with wired charging for this device, and that should take you just over an hour to go from 0 to 100%. But you can also get the option of wireless charging. Wireless charging is rated at 15 watts for this guy. Regarding charging, you can also use this device as a reverse wireless charger. For this to work, you need to go into your battery settings and turn on wireless power share, and this will allow you to set a battery limit for sharing its power. Overall, there are lots of benefits that you will get with the S23 FE alongside a few trade-offs. But what do you guys think? Would you spend $550 or around 830,000 naira on this device? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next video we post. Check out the S23 Ultra, which was the best smartphone, the best Android phone of 2023. I'll see you in that video.